All right, could you please state your name, your grade, and then your age?
You said name, grade, and age. Michael Lito, Bishop DeWanger High School, 11th grade.
Going from Snyder to DeWanger, what's the difference you've noticed in race, especially among students?
It's not, comparing it by diversity, it's not as closely as diverse at all. You come here, it's like, you come into a school like, this is a white school, this is a, it's like you come in, it's like it's a white school. Then you come into Snyder, it's like, it's mainly black, mainly minorities. You come in here, it's like, yo, fuck. It's like, you feel like, you kind of feel out of place.
Yeah.
When I came from Snyder to DeWanger, I felt out of place.
In your time since you've joined us at DeWanger, have you noticed or witnessed any problems like due to race between students or teachers?
Yeah, for sure. They, as far as race, I think it's coming to this, in this environment, it's for sure, like, I don't think it's intentional or consciously, but it's unconscious. Like, you get it 24/7.
Like what? Explain.
As far as, I might even go speak on teachers, I'm gonna speak on students. As far as students, it's like, you know, you come in, they'll hit me with black jokes all the time. And they just trying to be cool with me, you know, be funny, joke with me and stuff, and it's, you know, it's like Darlin said, you know, I got to the point where I don't take offense to it. It's cool. Like Sam Backstrom, that's my boy. He be saying some OC shit for sure. But he my dude, and I know he don't mean no wrong out of it. So it's like, I'm cool with it now. But at first, coming from Snyder to where it was like, he said what? He said the N-word, and some black dude's getting ready to jump somebody or fight over it. I was never the type to fight over it, you know. I was more chill, you know, whatever. But still, it triggered me. Now I got to the point where like, I just come to accept it. Teachers though, teachers been cool. I ain't never had no racism issue with no teachers. I think, you know, the administrators be they be bitchy. They not cool. They come off really. There's some administrators and some people and I don't want to say administrators. Miss Bennett, shout out to Miss Bennett. She cool as fuck. But I'm talking about like the attendance ladies though. Yeah, they not welcome. They come off kind of like, I come in like, I'll see Joe Tip walk in, and they'll be like, hey Joe, you know, hey. Now I come in, and they just kind of like, you know, I'm new. So now I come to the part where I come to the door, and I'm like, which button do I push? What? They looking at me like, you know, like just coming off bitchy and stuff. So at that, I mean, I haven't really experienced any major racism from teachers, but you know, it's not as bad as for me.
All right. So part of what we focusing on is like the N-word too. You saw Darwin's a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a big problem with student body using the N-word? And has anybody called you the N-word? And how do you feel about it?
People have called me the N-word here. Like being here, to them it's not like, they'll say it to Alec LaShore, probably to you or something, and it's not like, oh, you might try to fight me, or it's not okay, like. So like, I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is when, what was the question again?
How big of a problem do you think the use of the N-word is in the student body? Have you ever been called it? How do you feel about it?
It's a problem, like I said, it's a problem, but
it's like different when someone says it here.
it is. It's
Because they say that Snyder and like, you know, they're about to fight, but here they just think it's okay.
here because the people, like, they don't know no better, I guess is what I was saying. Y'all don't, like, they don't know no better, so when they say it, you can't really be pissed off at them, whereas they were, I don't know. I guess they're just raised differently.
It's a different environment.
Yeah, it's a whole different environment.
Yeah.
So,
Like in mine, I talked about how, like in my grade school, I went to St. Jude all the way through. I was like the only black kid in my whole grade. Like there were some above, some below, but like people do like racist jokes coming in all the time, and I felt like the alone, so I didn't want to say anything about it, you know. And I think that's kind of how it's different between public school in private school.
Yeah, but you based off now, I got something to say. But you saying, as far as you saying, you feel alone. You already felt alone. So, like here when I came here, knowing it's only probably about what maybe five black dudes I done seen here. Coming here, if someone calls you the N word and they don't mean no, at least the people that said it to me, they don't got no bad intentions. When they say it to me, if I came off like, yo, what the fuck? Like, what you say? Everybody would be like, they would look at me and I'd feel even more alone because of my reaction. I feel like I put myself in like, oh, he doesn't like us because we said that. So it kind of make me feel more alone or separated. Rather than if I was like, I laughed it off where I was like, it's cool, whatever. I know they're not trying to be mean about it. Then, like you watch, like someone like Darlings. Like someone like Darlings, he'll let you say it to him. It's cool. So like, I don't know, he fits in. He's helping himself. He fits in. Rather than he was like, he went off and didn't like y'all because y'all said that shit. He would make himself even more alone. He'd be more separated because of that. So I feel you off what you said.
Yeah. So another part we were talking about was, so you weren't here. Actually, you might have been here. You were here. We didn't schedule off school for MLK Day, but all the public schools did, and we just want your thoughts about that. What do you think?
I mean, my thought when at first it was like, it kind of felt personal towards like black people, kind of. I guess I would say, being black, it was like, cause like I said, when I came in from diversity, it's like an all white school, and the administrators are all white, and so everything, and so like, you know, they're making the rules as far as administratively, they're making the rules as far as if we do have school on MLK Day or we don't, and so me, I'm thinking like, is it because they don't? I don't know. Like I had mixed thoughts about it. I was like, every public school is doing it. Even some, I think Concordia might have did it. So, but they're more diverse and stuff. But maybe it's because it's mostly whites here that they felt like it doesn't have to. If there was more, like at Snyder or something, if there's more black people, if they didn't have it, parents or they wouldn't even send their kids to school. They would, because out of respect of the day.
All right, another question. So obviously you've seen a little bit of the teachers we have here at Dwayne. Do you think it would be beneficial to all students if we have a black teacher?
Yeah, I think it would. I think it'd be beneficial to all students if we had a black teacher. Just to, I don't know. I think it would just. I don't know. Look at all the teachers, all the people in authority. You see all, white teachers, all whatever. You have I think as far as for us, I love like when I look at football coaches, receivers or something like that. I'm like, man, is there any black coaches? Okay, it's just they can relate to you feeling alone, or they can relate to your history of being black, or they can just it's just like it's a personal thing, right? And you probably see some white students, they feel super comfortable with their teachers. Like, me, I'm like. There's some cool ones like Miss Ish, Miss Wolf, Miss Croman for sure. When I had you for 2 weeks, you was smooth. I ain't forget about you. But no, like there's some that you can feel open to, you can talk to, but that's because they're super open, super whatever. But all the white kids probably feel like they can talk to any of those teachers. Some black kids, when they see a black teacher, they be like, oh, I can vent to, I can talk, whatever. Just like at Snyder, there's black teachers there. Hey, and to wrap it up, man, feel free. Any of y'all watching right now, if you want to tap in with me, females only. Add me on the Snap, Mike_Little2. Instagram, at me, Jizzo, JIZZO _3. Know that.
Would you please state your name, grade, and age?
My name is Darlington Innocent. Most of you guys know me as Dimes. I'm a senior here at Dwenger, and I turned 18 about a month ago.
How diverse, based on the student body population, do you think Bishop Dwenger is?
Well, obviously, it's like 900 or like 1,000 to 5 ratio with whites and blacks here. But I don't really see any problems like with racism around here. I know there's been kids in the past that struggled with it, where like my friend Trinity Clark had to actually leave this school because he didn't like the way he felt like he was being treated by others. And there's other guys that have that problem, but I know Dwanger's not too diverse.
What do you think about race, specifically racism at Bishop Dwenger?
Racism at Bishop Dwenger. I feel like since I've gone to Catholic school my entire life, I've known how to deal with it, and so if it happens to me, I'd be able to block it out or deal with it in a responsible manner. But no one's ever tried me because they know who I am and they know like what I'm about, and so I've never had trouble with racism. But I know there is racism here, as there's racism everywhere.
So racism, like, what do you mean by that? Like, how do you see maybe some people being like victims of it, or maybe if it hasn't even happened to you, in what way?
I'd say people have been victims of it, like with the incident in the bathroom last year, with the hard art N-word was written on the wall, and I just didn't enjoy that. But I dealt with it. I talked to Chris Schwarzkopf about it because Trinity Clark had reported about it, and it was dealt with. And I know there's racism around here. There's a couple Titmans that are just racist. I mean, it's a matter of facts.
So, do you think that the situation with the stall in the bathroom, do you think that was handled like in a way that like you thought was fit?
Yes, I thought it. So what had happened was when Trinity had seen it, he went straight to the office and asked for it to get removed. And by the next day, it was removed, and they went into an investigation to find out who did it, or like make a list and see who possibly could have done it. And they tried to deal with it, and they did everything they could. They made sure they talked about it on the announcements, which is what helped a lot of African Americans, black students, like feel better. And they said like, yeah, you don't have to feel scared here because like we're all one. And I really appreciated that, but. Yeah, that whole incident was unfortunate overall.
So, one of our topics that we've been talking about is like the N-word. We kind of been using that with our idea. Do you think that the N-word, especially here at Dwenger, is used too much and is almost like a problem?
Well, usually kids come up to me and say jokes like, am I allowed to get a pass today? And it's like, I appreciate that, like how kids feel like they need to ask me first. But I know, like me specifically, I don't have a problem with anyone saying nigga because, like, I mean, like what? I say cracker. I say cracker, whatever. I mean, people don't really care about it. I mean, if you let it get to you, then it'll get to you. Like, I could call, like, Griffin a female dog, and I could call black male female dog, and maybe Griffin would react to a different way opposed to that person, but it's just like the way you react to stuff. And I feel like if someone were to call me a nigga or a nigger, I would have a different approach because a nigger is just straight disrespect, but I would still deal with it in a responsible manner.
So what do you mean by deal with it?
I would like talk to them and see as to why they thought that was a good idea and like what reason they had to call me that, and I beat their ass. But
So like a lot of songs use an N-word. What do you think is the acceptable level of people using it when singing a song versus using it in conversation?
It's a good question, man. Well, I feel like there's not a limit to it. Okay, so T Grizzly said, "Granddaddy was a slave, I admit it, but they caught so much weight I let my white boy say nigga." Especially with that coming out, boy, I'll tell you, all the white boys started saying nigga. And I was like, oh, that's low-key dope, because I was like, y'all niggas never wanted to say nigga. You seen T Grizzly gave y'all the approval.
I think like everybody should be able to say the N-word, or like does anybody who say it make you uncomfortable? Like is there certain people who you allow to say it or you don't allow to say it? Like what's up with that? Tell me.
Okay. I was thinking about that like the other day. Like, it's just it's just the certain swag you have to it. Like, if like my buddy, all my friends say it because I'm friends with them and I say it, so like they're gonna say it, and they're just like, yeah, they'll say it. But like, and I don't have a problem with other people that I don't know saying it if they're not African American. But it's when like I hear someone say it and they're like hesitant, or the way they say it, and like there's something in their voice that's just like, maybe you just shouldn't be saying this right now. Like if you're like, for example, like, what's good, nigga? Like you just say that, but then there'll be people like, what's good, nigga? Like, and I'm like, why are you like, you can't say it, so just don't say it. Like, don't try to like do it. You can't do it. Bitch, like if you're like, okay, if you're like someone I don't like, or like even then, if you're someone that I just don't feel like you should be saying nigga, then I don't want you saying around me. But I really don't care how much someone says nigga. Like it doesn't bother me at all.
It doesn't?
No, like
Why not?
because it's just like, dude, it's a word. It's a word. You can't let that bring you down. Like this, it's just how it is. Before I was born, that's how it was. I can't change that. We're too deep. We're too deep to just like get everyone to stop saying it. So all I can do is control my attitude about it. And so I don't care if you say nigga 100 times in one sentence. I don't care if you say,
Don't let it control you.
I don't want to control me. But it's when we get to the hard R's.
So there's a difference?
Yeah.
Why do
With
you think
nigga
there's a
and
difference?
nigger,
Why do you think there's a difference?
because it's just how it is, man. You don't hear rappers saying nigger. When has a rapper ever said nigger? When has a show had the word nigger in it? You don't ever see that unless it's like a show back then showing like a slave being called a nigger, but like in a show today, like with something in the hood, then it's like, let's go, nigger. Like you don't do that. Nigger is just disrespectful. But like nigga is just like, I see nigga as bro. I see nigga as like my friend. And like if you're my nigga, you're my bro. But
Obviously, most of us know you, but could you state your name
Okay.
and your position at the
All right.
school for us?
Jason Shifley, principal, Bishop Beggar High School.
First question: do you think that diversity at Bishop Dwenger is a problem?
I don't think it's a problem. It's something that we still need to improve on. I don't look at it as a problem as much as it is something that we still have part of our strategic plan to promote and to attract more diversity here. When I first came here in 2004, I think our, just kind of breaking up the demographics a little bit here. The Latino population, I think, was probably around 6 to 7%. African American was somewhere around maybe 2%, maybe even less than 2%, actually, to be honest with you. And now Latino population, I think, is somewhere around 13 to 14%. It's at least 13%. It may even be closer to 15% of the student body's Latino population. Our African American population has grown a little bit, but not as much as I had hoped. And then our Asian population, our Asian American population, Filipino population has grown a little bit too, but again, not as much as the Latino population or Hispanic population has. But we're constantly trying to attract more and more people. And I know maybe some people ask why, but it just, I think having a more diverse school makes us better prepared for the future. I mean, America is a much different America than it was when I was a kid. And it's a good thing. Diversity makes us stronger, makes us better. I would like to have more diversity on staff as well. Again, we have some Latino staff members, but as far as African American faculty members, we don't have any. I don't think we have any. Not even anybody who claims to be even a quarter Native American or anything like that even. So, not that I'm looking for it, but as that opportunity arises, I'm always going to, okay, it'd be nice to have that. I think it may attract more families than to say, okay, I think it's fine to go here because there's somebody that looks like me or, maybe thinks the way I do, it works there. Does that make sense? It helps out a little bit too.
And I think that touches on one of the topics that we're going to lead into, because some of the students we've interviewed specifically thought like all the authority figures at the school did not necessarily represent every student and how they look,
And one of the things that you brought up was African American teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And we're wondering, as a school, what we've done and what we can do, and why do you think that there might not be any African American students?
A lot of-
African American teachers.
And that's a good question. Since I've been here, I've only interviewed one African American teacher applicant, and we actually offered her the job. It was a female business teacher that we offered the job before we hired Mr. Petty. Mr. Petty he came in later. We interviewed her first before we interviewed him, and we offered her the job pretty much on the spot. Mrs. Wiedock and I, and Miss Johns was here at the time, and we were really excited about her being on staff. And I know maybe it sounds petty because she was African American, but I thought she was very charming. She was very smart. I just thought she would be a great role model for everybody. To be honest with you, a great teacher, but it also would help us in our diversity. Again, that's always playing in the back of my head. Okay, trying to get more diverse, but it's because of the applicants, TJ. We just don't have a lot of African American applicants, and I don't know if it's because Catholic schools keep people. If African Americans, I don't know. Predominantly, they're not Catholic. Maybe they're a non-denominational or Protestant religion. I don't know if they just feel like, well, maybe Catholics, either they think that we don't accept them, or I don't want to work there because I think you have to be Catholic. And when you go to these job fairs, a lot of people stay away from the table. Doesn't matter what color their skin is, they just stay away from our table because they think there's this misconception that you have to be Catholic to work in a Catholic school. Mm-hmm. And the brave people that come up to the table and they ask that question, I try to grab them as much. That's why I wasn't here yesterday. I was at a job fair at Purdue Fort Wayne. And luckily, people know who Dwenger is, okay, because they grew up in this area, so they were comfortable coming up to the table. At Ball State, when you had hundreds of kids walking by the table, I only had 2 kids that stopped by. 2. One was from Huntington, and the other one was from Wabash. And the girl from Wabash went to St. Bernard Elementary School. So she was familiar with the diocese. That was it. And he saw all these kids walk by. And I don't know what we can do as a diocese, not just Dwenger, but what can we do as a diocese to reach out to more kids and more families and to applicants and say, you don't have to be Catholic to be here. And if you are Catholic, that's wonderful and great, because we want you to, it makes us stronger too. But we don't want people to feel like if they're not white, they can't work here. I don't know what the answer is truly, but I that's something I think the diocese has to work on. Okay.
Another topic we want to talk about was this past year. I mean, taking away the e-learning, we didn't schedule off Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah.
Could you tell me the reasoning behind that?
I didn't. It was we didn't have that day off because we came to school on that day, correct?
I think we had an e-learning on that day.
We had e-learning on that day.
We had not scheduled it off.
Yeah. And we used to take the day off. And the reason why we didn't take the day off is, and we stopped doing that last year, I think. I don't think this year was the first year. I think last year we came to school. Is that correct? And the reasoning for that, and that's what you want to know, is because I really didn't feel like people really understood what the day was. And I felt like after talking to Yule's mom, her name just escapes me. She did a speech for us, if you remember, she did that. She understood that the inner city schools, they take that day off, and she says she doesn't see a lot of kids that come down to the Wilson Center, or she doesn't see them out doing anything, or maybe they're supposed, ideally you go to church, or you're doing some kind of community service, or maybe maybe you're doing something in awareness for social justice or equality, okay? Maybe going downtown and standing at the square, or doing something, something to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., or going to the bridge, for example. I just saw that on the news that day. And just talking with her, Shirley Wood, that's Yule's mom. No, I remember her name. She just said, maybe for Dwenger, just maybe for other schools in general, maybe they should have that day in session and just focus on what the day really is and have it where it's taught to them during the day. Now, we don't have a curriculum about Martin Luther King Jr. unless you take leadership development. I'm not sure if any of you have taken it. And they do cover Martin Luther King Jr. But I thought, well, maybe we can have a speech. We can talk about it a little bit. And Mr. Schwarzkopf, last year, when we had African American Month. I don't know if you remember, or Black History Month. Do you remember he was on the announcements and he talked about some
profiles.
do you remember that?
Mhm.
Do you remember that? And he wanted to do that, and we were talking about doing it, and then I thought, well, maybe Mrs. Wood would like to say some things, and she said some things. I tried to say as much as I could. That was the reason why we thought maybe it was more of a to educate than rather give a day off. I mean, we could have a day off, but I'm gonna throw a question back to you. How many of you think the kids would actually do something of service on that day, or do something to commemorate and celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s his life and his legacy, and
I think the main issue though, that kind of got a little like news coverage, at least I've heard from other schools, was like how it was perceived.
Yeah.
Because the way you explained it, like I don't think was as public
Yeah.
as before.
Yeah.
And you talked about like how we are presented diverse to other people.
Mhm.
So how do you think like taking that day off was like represented to the community schools and maybe even to other African Americans who might have been thinking about transferring?
I don't know.
So going back to like kind of like the diversity thing and racism, have you kind of, I don't know, like witnessed it or had like maybe?
I haven't witnessed it, but I've heard things. There was one year where, for some reason, they thought the N word was okay to say, and I think what happened was, if I recall correctly, our kids, the Dwenger kids that fed in from our feeder schools, there were some kids that came from they transferred in from public school, and they weren't exposed to the type of language that or just how they were addressing each other, and they were hearing. It didn't matter if it wasn't a black or white thing. It was the kids that were coming from public school. They were referring to each other using the N word, and our kids, first time hearing it, well, they've heard it before, I'm sure, but they thought, okay, must be okay to say. Do you understand what I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't saying the word right. If you understand what I'm trying to say, they were not saying. They said there's a difference in the way you say the word, so it can't end with an ER, right? And I said, well, to me the word is derogatory and negative no matter how you say it. But these boys, white or black, were talking to each other, coming from the public schools, using that word. Kind of like a term of, not a term of endearment, but just a friendly term, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's not right. But our kids, when I say our kids, again, the feeder school kids, like from Vincent's, Charles, Jude's, they heard that, and they thought, okay, it must be okay to say. So they started to refer to the kids as that, and it got really, really, really heated. And so that happened several years ago, probably a year before you were freshmen. It was just a year, I think you were 8th graders at the time, in grade school at the time when that happened. And you may have heard about it. And we really had to circle the wagons very quickly and educate everybody. No one got thrown out of school. Nobody got expelled or suspended. It was a matter of educating, okay? And that's how we handled it. We want to take racism very seriously, and we do. But it's a matter of how much do they understand. Because right before we videotaped, you mentioned sometimes they say things that they don't mean. It's just, it comes out. But we have to educate them. It doesn't mean make it right just because they don't know. That's when you stop everything. You say, okay, stop. Okay, why did you say it? Why do you think it's okay to say? You don't say it that way. Okay, you don't say that at all. And then you let people know how that makes that person feel.